His voice sliced through the festive hum of Maple Leaf Pub in Guelph, Ontario, like a bayonet through my chest. "He's just a waiter," my son-in-law spat, his finger jabbing at me with venomous contempt, as if I were dirt beneath his polished shoes. The wedding guests, Toronto's smug elite, gaped, their whispers cutting deeper than any wound from Afghanistan. My hands trembled on the beer tray, rage and shame boiling in my veins, each heartbeat a scream I couldn't release. I'd fought for this country, bled for it, yet here I stood, reduced to nothing. This is my story. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, whether it's somewhere beautiful in Canada or anywhere else in this amazing world. Ethan's cruel words still seared my soul as I navigated the bustling Maple Leaf Pub, its oak-paneled walls glowing under the soft hum of Guelph's evening lights. The scent of craft beer and polished cedar filled the air, but this small-town Ontario haven felt like a war zone tonight. I'm Robert McLean, a 8-year-old Afghanistan veteran, now pouring pints at this pub to send my daughter Clara to the University of Toronto. My black vest hid battle scars, but not the pride I carried for her. In my hand was a small box, a bronze military medal from my father, meant for Clara's wedding day, a symbol of our family's honor. Clara emerged from the kitchen, her smile bright but fraying at the edges, her hazel eyes locking onto mine with a flicker of worry. "Dad, you made it," she said, her voice warm, a fleeting shield against Ethan's venom. She glanced at the box. "What's that?" I opened it, revealing the medal, its weight heavy with sacrifice. "Your granddad's service medal," I said, my voice low but steady, "for you to carry today." Her eyes softened, fingers grazing the bronze, but Ethan stormed in, his tailored suit screaming Toronto privilege. "Robert," he said, his handshake limp, his gaze scraping over my scuffed shoes and faded tie. "Still stuck pouring beers in this hole." His words were a blade, twisting in old wounds. "Maple Leaf's been my home," I replied, swallowing the fire in my chest. Clara's smile faltered, but Ethan's eyes flicked to the medal. "Nice trinket," he sneered, "maybe worth a loonie at a flea market." The insult struck like a grenade, my father's legacy mocked as trash. Before I could speak, Clara's aunt, Margaret, called from the dining room. "Rehearsal, dinner's ready." Ethan's elite guests, bankers, city councilors filled the space with their polished chatter, a world where I was an outsider. I gripped the metal box, my resolve steeling, and followed them into the fray. The weight of Ethan's sneer clung to me like damp November rain as I followed the crowd into the Maple Leaf Pub's dining room, its polished oak tables gleaming under chandeliers that mocked my faded tie. Guelph's familiar warmth was gone, replaced by a battlefield of clinking glasses and forced laughter from Ethan's Toronto elite bankers in tailored suits, city councilors with Rolexes glinting on their wrists. My daughter Clara's wedding rehearsal dinner should have been a moment of pride, but Ethan's words, "nice trinket," still echoed, turning my father's military medal into a wound I couldn't bandage. I set the medal box on a side table, my fingers lingering on its worn edges, and took my seat at the edge of the room, as far from the head table as Clara's pleading glance could place me. The room buzzed with chatter about stock markets and cottage properties on Lake Ontario, conversations as foreign to me as the deserts of Kandahar. I tried to join in, my voice rough from years of shouting orders over gunfire. "Clara, the wedding plans sound incredible. How many guests?" I asked, hoping to bridge the gap. Clara's eyes lit up, her hands fidgeting with her napkin. "About 100, Dad. Close friends, Ethan's business partners, family, of course." Her warmth was a lifeline, but Ethan cut it short, slicing his venison with the precision of a surgeon. "We're keeping it exclusive," he said, not looking at me. "Only the right people, tech moguls, policy shapers. No offense, Robert, but this isn't a Legion Hall potluck. His words landed like a mortar round, the table falling silent as heads turned. My chest tightened, the air in the pub suddenly too thin. I raised Clara, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Worked double shifts at this pub to pay her tuition 4 years at the University of Toronto, $50,000 a year. Ethan's fork paused, his lips curling into a smirk that could have curdled the beer I'd poured. Admirable, he said, his tone dripping with condescension. But this wedding's an investment, Robert. My guests move in circles. You can't imagine CEOs who close million-dollar deals over dessert, counselors who greenlight skyscrapers. Your presence here, well, it's a bit awkward. Clara's fork clattered against her plate, her voice sharp. Ethan, that's enough. He's my father. Ethan leaned back, unfazed, his polished cufflinks catching the light. Clara, darling, I'm being practical. This event's a networking goldmine. Senator Harper's coming, for God's sake. We can't have— He gestured at me, my worn shoes and calloused hands. This. A waiter in the family photo doesn't scream success. The words ripped through me, each syllable a fresh scar over the ones I'd earned in battle. My hands gripped the tablecloth, knuckles white, as Margaret, Clara's aunt, coughed awkwardly, trying to shift the conversation to floral arrangements. But Ethan wasn't done. He set his wine glass down, his voice taking on a boardroom chill. Let's be clear, Robert, you're a small-town pub worker. My guests build Canada's future. You don't belong at their table. Oh, Clara's eyes filled with tears, her voice trembling. You can't talk to him like that. Ethan's gaze didn't waver, cold as a January wind off the Grand River. I'm protecting our future, Clara. Sentimentality won't pay for our Rosedale condo or the $200,000 wedding we're hosting. The number hit me like a punch, $200,000, more than I'd earned in 5 years of double shifts, tips stuffed into jars to cover Clara's textbooks. I'd fought insurgents in Kandahar, carried wounded comrades through hell, yet here I was, reduced to an embarrassment in my daughter's new world. The room spun, the chatter of Ethan's elite guests blurring into a roar. I stood, my chair scraping the hardwood floor, and faced him. I fought for this country, Ethan. I carried men to safety under fire. That's worth more than your condo. His laugh was sharp, a blade honed by privilege. Heroics don't pay the bills, Robert. You serve drinks. My guests shape policy. Know your place. Clara reached for my hand, her touch desperate, but Ethan waved her off. Let's take this outside, he said, striding toward the pub's patio, his posture commanding obedience. I followed, the metal box still on the table, a silent witness to my humiliation. The patio overlooked Guelph's quiet streets, streetlights casting long shadows across snow-dusted sidewalks. Ethan leaned against the railing, the city's skyline a backdrop to his arrogance. This wedding's my stage, Robert, he said, his breath visible in the cold. I won't let you ruin it with your story. Stay in the kitchen tomorrow. Serve the drinks. Don't embarrass Clara. My voice was low, almost a growl. She's my daughter. Ethan's eyes narrowed. She's my fiancée, and I decide who fits in her future. The door clicked shut behind me, sealing Clara's protests inside, leaving me with the weight of his words and the bitter chill of a fight I couldn't win. Ethan's ultimatum echoed in my skull like gunfire across Kandahar's dunes as I stepped back into the Maple Leaf pub, the patio's chill clinging to my skin. Guelph's quiet streets faded behind the glass door, but the warmth of the oak-lined dining room couldn't touch the ice in my chest. I was Robert McLean, a 8-year-old Afghanistan veteran who'd carried men through hell, yet now I stood on the edge of my daughter Clara's world, banished from her wedding day. Ethan's words, "Know your place," cut deeper than any shrapnel, shredding the pride I'd clung to through years of double shifts at this pub to pay Clara's $50,000 a year tuition at the University of Toronto. The bronze military medal, my father's legacy, sat abandoned on the side table, its gleam mocking my failure to belong. Clara caught me at the dining room's threshold, her eyes red-rimmed, her voice a broken whisper. "Dad, I'm so sorry," she said, clutching my arm as if I might vanish. He had no right to say those things. Her wedding dress rehearsal gown shimmered under the chandeliers, but her trembling hands betrayed her heart. "It's not your fault, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile, though my throat burned with unshed tears. "Focus on your day. I'll be fine." But I wasn't. Each step toward the exit felt like wading through mud, the weight of Ethan's $200,000 wedding, a sum I'd never see in a lifetime, crushing my resolve. I drove home through Guelph's snow-dusted streets, the city's lights blurring into streaks as memories flooded back. I saw Clara at 5, her tiny hands clutching my old service cap, giggling as I promised to always protect her. I saw myself at 35, back from Afghanistan, trading my historian dreams for night shifts at the Maple Leaf pub, every loonie tipped into a jar for her education. 4 years at university, $200,000 in total, scraped together from 12-hour shifts, aching knees, and smiles for customers who never saw the soldier beneath the vest. I'd given everything to give her a future, but Ethan's world had no room for me. My apartment on Gordon Street was a stark contrast to Ethan's Rosedale dreams, a one-bedroom walk-up with peeling paint and a single bulb flickering in the kitchen. I sank into a worn armchair, the silence deafening, broken only by the hum of a fridge older than Clara. The metal box, still in my coat pocket, felt heavier than a rifle. I opened it, the bronze catching the dim light, and remembered my father pinning it on his uniform, his voice steady. "Duty over self, Robert." I'd lived that creed, but tonight it felt like a betrayal. Ethan's voice rang again. "You don't belong." Was he right? Had my sacrifices, my blood, my dreams been for nothing? My phone buzzed, Clara's name lighting up the screen. I hesitated, the ache in my chest warning me against more pain. But I answered. "Dad," she sobbed, her voice cracking like thin ice. "Ethan says if you show up tomorrow, he'll have you fired from the pub. He knows the owner, Liam O'Connor, owes him favors." The words were a gut punch, stealing my breath. Liam, a fellow veteran who'd fought beside me in Kandahar, was my lifeline, my brother in arms who'd given me this job when the world turned its back. Losing it would mean losing my home, my stability, everything I'd built for Clara. "He can't do this," I said, my voice hoarse, but Clara's sobs grew louder. "He means it, Dad. He says you'll ruin everything." I closed my eyes, the room spinning as Afghanistan flashed before me, sandstorms, screams, the weight of a wounded comrade on my shoulders. I'd faced death without flinching, but this was a wound no metal could honor. "Don't worry, Clara," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'll find a way to be there." But as I hung up, the darkness of my apartment closed in, the metal cold in my hand. Ethan's threat wasn't just about the wedding, it was about erasing me from Clara's life. My fingers traced the metal's edges, the last shred of my father's pride, and I wondered if I'd ever been enough. The clock ticked past midnight, each second a reminder that tomorrow I'd face a battle no soldier could train for. The darkness of my Gordon Street apartment clung to me like the dust of Kandahar, Ethan's threat to have me fired from the Maple Leaf pub a fresh wound over scars I thought had healed. I was Robert McLean, a 58-year-old Afghanistan veteran, my life's work reduced to a bargaining chip in my daughter Clara's glittering $200,000 wedding. The bronze military medal, My father's legacy lay heavy in my palm, its cold edges a reminder of duty over self. Clara's sobs from our midnight call echoed in my mind, her fear that Ethan's influence over Liam O'Connor, my boss and fellow veteran, could strip away my livelihood. But I'd faced worse than Ethan's arrogance insurgents, sandstorms, the weight of dying comrades. I wouldn't let him erase me from Clara's wedding day. Dawn broke over Guelph, Ontario, the snow-dusted streets glowing under a pale sun as I drove to the Maple Leaf pub. The familiar crunch of gravel under my tires steadied my nerves, the pub's cedar-scented warmth a refuge from the storm Ethan had unleashed. Liam O'Connor stood behind the bar, polishing glasses with the same deliberate focus we'd once used cleaning rifles in Kandahar. His weathered face, lined from years of holding this place together, tightened as he saw me. "You're early, Robert," he said, his voice gruff but warm, a brother in arms who knew the cost of survival. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs, adding a splash of cream to his, a ritual from our days in the desert. I set the mug before him, my hand steady despite the fire in my chest. "Liam, I need a favor," I said, my voice low, each word a bullet I couldn't afford to miss. His eyes met mine, sharp as ever. "What's wrong, brother?" The story poured out Ethan's patio ultimatum, his sneer about my place, his threat to have me fired if I dared show up at Clara's wedding. Liam's hand stilled, the glass he was polishing forgotten. "He said that? To a man who carried me through a firefight?" His voice was a growl, the anger of a soldier who'd seen too many battles to tolerate betrayal. "I need to be at Clara's wedding," I said, my gaze fixed on the pub's Canadian flag hanging above the bar. "Not as a guest," Ethan's made that clear. "Hire me to work it. Let me serve the drinks. I'll be invisible, just another waiter in a black vest, but I'll see her walk down the aisle." Liam leaned back, his jaw tight, the weight of my request settling like a grenade between us. "You're asking to hide in plain sight at your own daughter's wedding. That's not right, Robert." His words echoed my own pain, but I pressed on. "Right or not, it's the only way. Ethan can't stop a waiter from doing his job." The pub's morning quiet was broken only by the hum of a delivery truck outside, its rumble a faint echo of armored convoys. Liam scrubbed a hand through his graying hair, his eyes searching mine for doubt he wouldn't find. "Ethan's got pull," he said. "He's been throwing money at this place, acting like he owns it. But I owe you, Robert. Kandahar. 2008 you dragged me out of that ambush. I haven't forgotten." His voice cracked, a rare fracture in his stoic facade. I nodded, the memory of blood and sand binding us tighter than any contract. "I'll talk to the catering manager, Sarah Thompson," Liam said, pulling out his phone. "She runs the wedding service. Owes me for covering her last-minute cancellations. You'll be on the crew, 11 a.m. tomorrow." Relief flooded me, sharp and warm like the first sip of coffee after a long night. "Thank you, Liam," I said, my voice thick. He waved it off, his eyes hard. "Don't thank me yet. Ethan's not the type to back down. He'll be watching." I spent the afternoon preparing, ironing my black vest and white shirt, the uniform that had cloaked me in invisibility for years. Each crease was a vow to be there for Clara, to defy Ethan's world of Rosedale condos and Toronto elites. The metal box sat on my kitchen table, its bronze catching the light, a talisman of resilience. I wasn't just a waiter, not just a veteran. I was a father, and no amount of money could strip that from me. As the sun dipped below Guelph's skyline, I felt the stirrings of a plan not just to survive Ethan's cruelty, but to reclaim my place. Tomorrow, I'd walk into that wedding, unseen but unyielding, ready to fight for the moments that mattered most. The Maple Leaf pub pulsed with the energy of Clara's wedding, its oak walls bathed in the golden glow of chandeliers, the air thick with the clink of glasses and the murmur of Guelph's elite mingling with Toronto's power brokers. I, Robert McLean, a 8-year-old Afghanistan veteran, moved through the crowd in my black vest, invisible as a ghost, pouring craft beer with the precision of a soldier on patrol. Ethan's threat to have me fired, his sneer that I didn't belong, still burned like a fresh wound. But my plan hatched with Liam O'Connor's help kept me here, serving drinks to ensure I'd witness my daughter's vows. The bronze military medal, my father's legacy, rested in my pocket, its weight anchoring my resolve against the storm of humiliation. The guests, bankers in tailored suits, city councilors with polished smiles chatted about stock portfolios and Muskoka cottages, their world a galaxy apart from my Gordon Street apartment. I offered a tray of lagers to a woman in a silk gown, her diamond earrings catching the light. "Lovely service," she said, her voice polite but distant, as if I were part of the decor. I nodded, my face a mask of professionalism, but inside, my heart pounded with the rhythm of Kandahar's chaos. Clara stood at the head table, radiant in her white gown, her hazel eyes scanning the room until they met mine, a fleeting smile of gratitude breaking through her bridal glow. Ethan, beside her, greeted guests with a politician's charm, but his glances toward me were sharp, a predator tracking prey. Across the room, a flat-screen television above the bar played a documentary, a Maple Leaf pub tradition to add gravitas to events. The sound was muted, but images of Afghanistan flickered dusty convoys, soldiers in fatigues, the stark reality of war. I kept moving, refilling glasses, my black vest blending into the crowd, until a gruff voice shattered the hum. Holy hell, that's him! A gray-haired man in a navy blazer, his chest adorned with a row of medals, stood pointing at the screen, then at me. Heads turned, conversations faltering. "That's Sergeant Robert McLean, the hero of Kandahar," he bellowed, his voice carrying the weight of a battlefield command. The room froze, glasses mid-air, eyes darting between the television and me. The documentary showed a younger me, 35, in desert camo, dragging a wounded soldier through a hail of bullets, my face grim but determined. The caption read, "Sergeant McLean awarded the Star of Military Valor, 2008. A gasp rippled through the crowd, and Ethan's pint glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the oak floor with a crack that echoed like gunfire. His face drained of color, his polished facade crumbling as every guest turned to stare not at him, but at me, the waiter he'd called worthless. "Robert McLean?" A woman in pearls whispered, her phone already out searching my name. "He saved 3 men under fire," another guest read aloud, his voice trembling with awe. "Star of Military Valor, one of Canada's highest honors." The room buzzed, phones lighting up as guests scoured the internet, clips of my citation spreading like wildfire. Clara's hands flew to her mouth, tears welling as she realized the depth of my sacrifice, not just as a father, but as a soldier. Ethan stood rooted, his jaw slack, the Toronto elite he'd courted now whispering about the man he'd banished to the kitchen. I kept pouring beer, my hands steady, but my chest swelled with a pride I hadn't felt since Kandahar. "More lager, sir?" I asked a stunned counselor, my voice calm, as if the room's spotlight wasn't burning through my invisibility. The gray-haired veteran approached, his eyes glistening. "Sergeant McLean, I served in 2009. Your name's a legend in the regiment. Why didn't you say anything?" I met his gaze, my voice low but firm. "Today's about Clara, not me." His nod was heavy with respect, a soldier's salute without a gesture. The chatter grew louder, guests clustering around phones, replaying clips of my rescue mission. He carried his squad through a kill zone, one said. And he's serving us drinks? Another marveled. Ethan's eyes darted frantically, his control slipping like sand through his fingers. Clara stepped toward me, her gown rustling, her voice breaking. "Dad, why didn't you tell me?" I touched her shoulder, the metal in my pocket a silent vow. "You didn't need a hero, sweetheart. You needed a father." The room's energy shifted, Ethan's elite world tilting as the truth about Sergeant Robert McLean burned brighter than their wealth ever could. The Maple Leaf pub's oak walls seemed to close in as the revelation of my past as Sergeant Robert McLean, hero of Kandahar, rippled through Clara's wedding like a shock wave. The shattered pint glass at Ethan's feet lay forgotten, its shards glinting under Guelph's chandelier light, a mirror to his crumbling control. I, a 5'8" Afghanistan veteran, stood firm in my black vest, the bronze military medal in my pocket a silent anchor against the storm of attention. The Toronto elite bankers, counselors, tech moguls whispered furiously, their phones glowing with clips of my 2008 rescue mission, their awe stripping away the invisibility Ethan had forced upon me. Clara's tear-filled eyes held pride, but Ethan's face, pale as a January snowbank, betrayed a man unraveling before his own guests. A hush fell as a tall man in a pinstripe suit, his tie emblazoned with a Toronto City crest, rose from a table near the bar. His voice boomed, cutting through the buzz like a drill sergeant's command. "Ethan Bennett, you called this man a mere waiter?" he demanded, pointing at me, his eyes blazing with indignation. "Sergeant McLean saved lives under fire, earned the Star of Military Valor, and you dared reduce him to a nobody?" The room held its breath, every guest leaning forward, their earlier chatter about Rosedale condos and Muskoka cottages silenced. Ethan's hands twitched, his polished charm dissolving under the weight of the counselor's scorn. I didn't know," he stammered, his voice a thin thread, barely audible over the hum of the pub's heaters. Clara pushed back her chair, her white gown sweeping the floor, her voice sharp as a bayonet. "You didn't know because you never cared to ask, Ethan," she said, her hazel eyes flashing with fury. "My father gave up everything, his dreams, his future to put me through university. And you think he doesn't belong here?" Her words struck like a grenade, and a murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. A woman in a velvet dress, her phone still open to my citation, stood and turned to her table. "I'm leaving," she declared, her voice cold. "I don't celebrate with people who disrespect heroes." Two other guests followed, their chairs scraping the oak floor, their exit a silent rebuke that echoed louder than any speech. Ethan's eyes darted, panic replacing his arrogance. "Clara, please," he said, stepping toward her, but she held up a hand, her wedding veil trembling with her resolve. "No, Ethan. If you can't respect my father, there's no wedding. I won't marry someone who values money over honor." The ultimatum landed like a mortar round, the room gasping as Clara's words hung in the air. I stood frozen, my tray of lagers heavy in my hands, my heart torn between pride and pain. Clara's stand was a fire I hadn't seen since she was a child, demanding I wear her paper crown at imaginary tea parties in our cramped Guelph apartment. But this was no game, this was her future, and she was choosing me over Ethan's world. The counselor spoke again, his voice steady but scathing. "Bennett, you've shown your true colors. You think a $200,000 wedding buys respect? Sergeant McLean's courage is worth more than every loonie you've spent." Heads nodded, and more guests shifted uncomfortably, some gathering their coats, their faces tight with disapproval. Ethan's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists, but he had no defense. The elite he'd courted now saw him as small, a man who'd mocked a hero for clout. I kept moving, offering drinks to a table of stunned bankers, my voice calm despite the storm in my chest. "Another lager, ma'am?" I asked, my professionalism a shield against the chaos Ethan had sown. Clara stepped closer, her hand brushing mine, her voice soft but fierce. "Dad, I'm so proud of you. I didn't know all you did." I squeezed her hand, the metal in my pocket a quiet vow. "I did it for you, sweetheart," I said, my throat tight. Ethan watched, isolated at the head table, his dream of a perfect networking event crumbling like sand. The pub's Canadian flag hung above, a reminder of the honor he'd failed to grasp. As the crowd's murmurs grew, I felt the tide turning not just for me, but for every veteran who'd been overlooked. Ethan's reckoning was here, and I stood tall, ready for whatever came next. The Maple Leaf pub's oak walls seemed to hum with a new energy, the weight of Clara's ultimatum and the counselor's rebuke still ringing like a battlefield echo. I, Robert McLean, a 8-year-old Afghanistan veteran, stood amidst the wreckage of Ethan Bennett's arrogance, my black vest a quiet badge of resilience. The shattered glass at his feet, a symbol of his broken control, glinted under Guelph's chandelier light, while the bronze military medal in my pocket pulsed with the pride of my father's legacy. Clara's words, "I won't marry someone who values money over honor," had silenced the Toronto elite, their Rosedale dreams and Muskoka cottage chatter replaced by a stunned reverence for the truth about Sergeant McLean. Ethan, isolated at the head table, his face ashen, faced a room that no longer belonged to him. Ethan rose slowly, his tailored suit creased, his hands trembling as he approached the microphone at the center of the pub. The crowd hushed, their eyes sharp with expectation, the air thick with the scent of cedar and unresolved tension. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice cracking like thin ice on the Grand River, "I've made a terrible mistake." His gaze flickered to me, then dropped, unable to hold the weight of my stare. I called Robert McLean a mere waiter, a nobody. I was wrong. He's a hero. A man who saved lives in Kandahar, who gave up everything for his daughter, Clara. The admission was a knife, cutting through his polished facade, exposing a man humbled before a room of witnesses. Clara's eyes glistened, her white gown catching the light as she stepped toward me, her hand finding mine. "Dad, you deserve to be here not as a waiter, but as my father," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaking her cheeks. I squeezed her hand, the medal in my pocket a silent vow, my heart swelling with a pride fiercer than any I'd felt in battle. Ethan cleared his throat, his words faltering but sincere. "Robert, I'm sorry. I judged you by your job, your clothes, when I should have seen your character. Please, join us at the head table as Clara's father, not hired help." The room held its breath, every guest waiting for my response. The Canadian flag above the bar, a quiet reminder of the honor at stake. I stepped forward, my boots steady on the oak floor, and faced Ethan. "Family's what matters, Ethan," I said, my voice low but clear, carrying the weight of 58 years of sacrifice. "Not money, not status. If you understand that now, we can start over." I extended my hand and he took it, his grip tentative but real, a bridge across the chasm he'd built. The crowd exhaled, a murmur of approval rippling through the pub as Clara wrapped her arms around me, her veil brushing my shoulder. "I love you, Dad," she whispered, her voice a balm to wounds deeper than Kandahar's scars. Liam O'Connor emerged from the kitchen, his weathered face bright with a soldier's pride. "That's the Robert I know," he said, clapping a hand on my shoulder, his Kandahar comrade's loyalty shining through. The guests rose, their applause starting soft but growing into a warm crescendo, glasses raised in toasts not to wealth, but to courage. "To Sergeant McLean," a counselor called, his voice thick with respect. "To a real Canadian hero," another added, her wine glass catching the light. The pub, once a battlefield, now felt like home, its oak walls echoing with a unity Ethan's $200,000 wedding couldn't buy. Clara led me to the dance floor, her hand firm in mine. "Will you dance with me, Dad?" she asked, her smile radiant, free of the strain that had haunted her earlier. As the band struck up a slow waltz, we moved together, her gown flowing like a river, my black vest no longer a mark of servitude but a testament to resilience. The crowd formed a circle, their faces warm with admiration, not for a waiter, but for a father who'd fought for his place. Ethan watched, his posture softer, a man learning the cost of pride. The melody carried us, and for the first time that night, I felt whole, not a hero of Kandahar, but a father, standing tall in the heart of Guelph, where honor outshone any loony's gleam. The Maple Leaf pub's oak walls faded into a soft glow as the waltz ended, Clara's hand still warm in mine, her smile a beacon through the scars of this night. I, Robert McLean, a 58-year-old Afghanistan veteran, stood in Guelph's heart, no longer a waiter but a father reclaimed. Ethan's apology, Clara's fire, and the crowd's applause had forged a new truth. Honor outweighs wealth, and family endures beyond any loony's shine. The bronze military medal in my pocket, my father's legacy, now felt light, its duty fulfilled in the pride of my daughter's eyes. This wedding, once a battlefield of Ethan's $200,000 ambition, had become a testament to resilience, a lesson carved in the quiet strength of Canada's veterans. Every veteran carries a story of sacrifice, of battles fought in Kandahar's dust or Guelph's shadows. Their worth isn't measured in Rosedale condos or Toronto titles, but in the love they give, the lives they touch. Let Robert's story remind us, true courage is standing tall when the world calls you small. If this moved you, share it. Like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Maple Revenge for more stories of heart and grit. Together, let's honor the heroes among us, whose quiet strength builds the Canada we cherish.